Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello, everyone.
Before we even get started today, I just want to offer a very heartfelt divine blessing for your day and for your entire week ahead. May it be filled with clarity, purpose, and peace.
Truly.
We are so thrilled you're here with us, joining the conversation. Today we're focusing on a story that, well, if you grew up around any sort of faith tradition, you've probably heard it.
Yeah, the classic Sunday school felt bored story.
Exactly. But today we're going to look way past the Sunday school version.
We really are. We're looking at chapter 16 of the book of Exodus.
Right.
This is the famous account of the Israelites surviving in the harsh desert on manna and quail. But the layers of meaning here are just incredible when you actually stop to analyze the text.
And the history behind it, too.
Yes.
And to help us do that, we're pulling our insights today from the study notes and the translated text of two incredibly comprehensive biblical resources. We've got the Holman Study Bible and the NAA Study Bible.
Two fantastic sources.
They really are. And our mission today is to explore the actual geography of this event, the deep and honestly somewhat uncomfortable psychology of human complaining.
Oh, definitely uncomfortable.
Yeah. And the profound lessons on trust, rest, and daily provision that are completely hidden in those ancient desert sands. Okay, let's unpack this.
It's the perfect place to start because context is everything. According to the chronological notes in our sources, we actually have an exact timeline for when this story kicks off.
Which is pretty rare.
It is. It's the 15th day of the second month since the Israelites left Egypt.
So if we do the math, that is exactly 1 month, 30 days.
Precisely. They have been free for exactly 1 month. Think about that time frame for a second. The initial adrenaline rush of escaping Pharaoh.
The plagues, the escape.
Right. The incredible, miraculous high of walking through the parted waters of the Red Sea. That honeymoon phase is officially over.
It's completely done.
The adrenaline is worn off, and the reality of their situation is set in.
And the reality of their location is just bleak. If you're looking at the map with us right now, you would see they are completely boxed in. The text says they are in the desert of Sin, which is located between Elim and Sinai.
And we should clarify something about that name.
Oh, right. Looking at the geographical notes, sin isn't the English word for, doing something morally wrong.
Right. It's a Hebrew transliteration.
Yeah.
It's likely just an abbreviation for Sinai itself.
So they aren't in the desert of bad behavior.
No. The traditional location for Mount Sinai, which is noted in the Holman study materials, is Jebel Musa.
Down in the south.
Exactly. Down in the southern part of the Sinai Peninsula. So they are trekking through this specific, highly unforgiving terrain. And the Hebrew word used for this wilderness is midbar.
Midbar. I found the description of the midbar in the study notes to be incredibly vivid. We aren't talking about a nice sandy beach without water.
Far from it.
It's an arid, rocky land. It is completely vulnerable to fierce, strong winds. It is a place of sheer desolation.
It's a wasteland.
Yeah. Put yourself in their sandals for a moment. You've traded the fertile, totally predictable Nile River Delta for a wasteland where nothing grows.
It's a massive shock to the system.
Huge. But, crucially, the notes point out that this desolate midbar is the exact environment where God chooses to prove his miraculous love for Israel.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of the people in the midst of that desolation. Because the wilderness immediately triggers a severe crisis.
Right.
And how do they react? They grumble. But it's not just a polite complaint to management.
No, it's not a suggestion box.
No, it is dark, tragic, and honestly, highly ironic.
You read their complaint in the text, and they are literally romanticizing their slavery.
Like wild.
They actually say to Moses and Aaron, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt."
Wow.
There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. I mean, they are flat out accusing their liberators of bringing them into the desert to starve an entire population to death.
It reveals how incredibly short and ungrateful human memory can be, doesn't it?
It really does.
They fundamentally misunderstood what freedom actually meant. They were brutalized slaves. It's highly unlikely they were sitting around eating endless pots of high-quality meat back in Egypt.
Right. They're building bricks in the mud.
Exactly. But fear completely distorts memory. When faced with the anxiety of the unknown, the human brain often prefers a painful past that is familiar over a free future that is uncertain.
That is such a piercing observation, and it's so true for all of us today.
And we'll all do it.
We do. You look back at a terrible job, a bad situation, or a toxic relationship, and the second things get hard in your new life, you think, well, at least back then I knew what to expect.
It's the illusion of predictability. And the study notes make another critical point here.
Well,
While the Israelites are directing all this anger and complaining at their human leaders, Moses and Aaron, the text explicitly states they're actually murmuring against God. Moses even says to them, your grumblings are not against us, but against the Lord.
Wait, I want to pause on that because this is where the story usually loses me.
Yeah.
They openly accuse God of trying to kill them in the desert. They are incredibly ungrateful just 30 days after being saved. You would expect some kind of divine punishment for this total lack of faith, wouldn't you?
You'd think so.
A lightning bolt, or at least a severe reprimand?
You would expect wrath.
Yeah.
Especially given how other ancient deities are depicted in similar literature from that time.
Right. Ancient gods were not known for their patience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, the response to this grumbling is where the narrative pivots beautifully. The response is entirely grace. God doesn't strike them down. He sets a table for them.
He promises a menu straight from heaven, meat at twilight and bread in the morning.
Yes.
Let's talk about the evening meat first, the quail. I hadn't considered the actual logistics of this until I read the specific details provided in the Holman notes regarding these birds.
It's a brilliant intersection of natural phenomena and divine timing.
It really is.
The notes explain that quails migrate between Europe and Africa in massive flocks, and their flight path takes them directly over the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula.
So picture this. Because they are flying massive distances over the sea and the desert, they are subject to those fierce, punishing winds of the midbar we talked about earlier.
Right.
By the time they reach the airspace over the Israelite camp, these birds are often completely exhausted.
Just wiped out.
They fly incredibly low, or they literally just drop and land on the ground, making them remarkably easy to catch. It's this fascinating instance of God using a completely natural migration pattern to provide miraculously for his people right when they need it most.
It shows a provision that works in harmony with the rhythms of creation. God is utilizing the existing natural order to sustain them.
That's so practical.
It is. But then we get to the morning provision. The dew evaporates, and something entirely unnatural, or at least entirely unfamiliar to them, is left behind on the desert floor.
The manna. The text describes it so vividly, it almost makes you hungry.
It really does.
It's a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. It's white, looking like coriander seed, and the taste is described as being like wafers made with honey.
It sounds almost like a sweet, delicate pastry.
Yeah, a desert pastry.
It's daily sustenance, but it's also sweet. It's a form of comfort food in the middle of a harsh, unforgiving wilderness. But the Israelites wake up, walk out of their tents, and have absolutely no idea what they are looking at.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yes.
The actual origin of the word manna. When the people see it on the ground, they look at each other and ask, what is it?
Right.
And in Hebrew, the phrase for what is it sounds exactly like manhu.
The very name of this miraculous heavenly food is literally a question. Manhu? What is it? It becomes manna.
I love that.
It's a daily reminder of their dependence on something they couldn't even fully comprehend or explain.
And the implications of this bread from heaven don't just stay isolated in the book of Exodus, do they?
Not at all. They echo through centuries of biblical literature. The NAA study notes explicitly connect this desert narrative to the New Testament. In the Gospel of John, chapter 6, Jesus references this exact historical event. The crowds are asking him for a sign, specifically pointing out the manna their ancestors ate in the wilderness.
They want another free meal.
Exactly. And Jesus responds by identifying himself as the true bread that came down from heaven. The physical provision in the desert becomes a profound theological metaphor for spiritual sustenance later on.
It's an incredible thread to pull on. But back in the desert, this bread didn't just come with a sweet taste. It came with incredibly strict, non-negotiable rules.
Very strict.
God was using this food to test the people, to see if they would actually walk in his laws.
The primary rule was a quota, a strict daily quota. Gather only what you need for today. The exact measurement given is 1 omer per person.
And the NAA notes helpfully clarify that an omer is roughly equivalent to 2 liters.
Which is a decent amount.
Yeah, so 2 liters of manna per person per day. If you are the head of a household, you go out, you get your 2 liters for each person in your tent, and you are done. Stop gathering.
It sounds simple enough on paper, but think about the profound anxiety of these people.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine you are one of these Israelites. You are a firmly enslaved individual, wandering in a barren wasteland with your children, completely terrified of starvation.
Yeah.
The instinct to hoard, to gather extra, just in case the magical bread doesn't show up tomorrow, would be absolutely overwhelming.
I would be the first one out there with a wheelbarrow, honestly. If you think about your own grocery habits during a crisis, we all remember people hoarding supplies a few years ago. It's human nature to stockpile out of fear.
It is.
But the text shows exactly what happened to the people who let fear or greed override the instruction. If you tried to stash some away for the next morning, it didn't just dry up quietly.
No, it did not.
It bred worms and it completely stank. It rotted overnight in your tent.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this rule about the omer is deeply profound. It's not just an arbitrary desert survival tactic. It's a completely new economic system.
Wow.
The Apostle Paul actually reaches back to this exact rule centuries later in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. He uses the manna quota to teach early Christians about economic equality and generosity.
I love that the notes point out Paul's quotation, "The one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little."
It's brilliant.
It's a complete equalization of resources. It removes the entire concept of wealth accumulation based on food. You literally could not be a manna billionaire. Your surplus rotted.
It forces a posture of daily trust, which is incredibly difficult for the human ego. You cannot rely on yesterday's gathered resources, and you cannot secure tomorrow's resources today.
You just have to wait.
You can only trust that the provider will provide again when the sun comes up. It strips away the illusion that we are the ultimate source of our own security.
So what does this all mean for their week? Because the rules shift dramatically right before the weekend. There is a massive plot twist to this gathering rule on the 6th day.
There is. For 5 days, hoarding leads to rotting, worm-infested manna. But on the 6th day, Moses tells them to intentionally gather double.
Break the rule.
Right, 2 omers or 4 liters per person. Why? Because the 7th day is to be a Sabbath, a day of complete rest to the Lord. And miraculously, the extra manna kept for the Sabbath morning does not breed worms, and it does not smell.
God literally pauses the natural decaying process so the people can take a day off. That is staggering when you really think about it.
It is entirely radical. The study notes emphasize just how revolutionary this concept is. This is the very first time the Sabbath, from the Hebrew word Shabbath, meaning to cease, to stop, to rest, is introduced to the nation of Israel.
The very first time.
And notice the timing. This is happening in Exodus 16, which is before they even get to Mount Sinai. This is before the 10 Commandments are given.
That completely flips the narrative I had in my head. We usually think of the Sabbath as one of the big 10 rules etched in stone, a heavy religious obligation.
A burden, almost.
Yeah. But here, it's introduced as a gift of survival and rest long before it's codified into law.
To really appreciate this, contrast it with where they just came from. In Egypt, under Pharaoh's economic system, there was absolutely no rest.
7 days a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember what happened when Moses first asked Pharaoh for a few days off to worship? Pharaoh's response was to double their workload and take away the straw they needed for making bricks.
Punish them for wanting a break.
Yes. Pharaoh's empire relied on relentless, unbroken, anxiety-driven human labor. Your worth was tied entirely to your production.
And God's first major structural change to their new society is to say, stop working.
Yes. He commands rest. And he doesn't just suggest it. He alters the fundamental laws of nature to make it possible.
By stopping the rot.
He ensures the food doesn't spoil, so they have the practical means to actually enjoy the rest without starving. It's a total deconstruction of the endless production mindset of Egypt. God is teaching them that they are no longer machines. They are human beings who are allowed to rest.
It is a beautiful shift in identity, and clearly this was a lesson God didn't want them to ever forget, even after they eventually left the desert. Which brings us to the legacy of the manna. Moses tells Aaron to take a jar, put exactly 1 omer, those 2 liters of manna into it, and keep it for future generations.
The instruction in the text is to place it before the testimony to be kept safe. And the study sources point out a really fascinating historical quirk here regarding the writing of the text.
Yes, I noticed that. Explain what the notes mean when they call this a literary anachronism.
An anachronism is simply something placed out of its proper chronological time. In this case, the text mentions putting the jar of manna in front of the testimony, which is another term for the Ark of the Covenant, the golden box that would eventually hold the 10 Commandments.
Right.
But if you look closely at the timeline of the Exodus story, the Ark hasn't even been built yet. The instructions to build the Ark don't come until chapters 25 and 37.
Okay, so the person compiling or finalizing this text is writing with a broad forward-looking perspective. They are telling the story knowing exactly how it ends. The notes mention that the Israelites ended up eating this daily manna for 40 years, right up until they crossed over the borders into the inhabited land of Canaan.
It became a generational reality. Think about the kids who were born during that 40-year trek.
Oh, wow.
An entire generation grew up knowing nothing but the daily miraculous provision of God, a provision they couldn't store up, couldn't control, and couldn't produce themselves.
And this brings it all right back to you listening to this right now. It is so incredibly easy to look back at the Israelites and judge them for complaining just a month after being freed from slavery.
So easy.
But how often do you and I do the exact same thing? How often do we romanticize our past Egypts, the bad habits, the toxic work environments, the relationships that enslaved us but felt comfortable, the second we face the uncertain wilderness of a new chapter in our lives?
It's human nature to crave the illusion of control. The daily manna is a profound, disruptive lesson for all of us. It teaches us not to hoard out of fear for tomorrow and not to long for the familiar pains of yesterday,
Yeah.
but to radically trust in the provision meant just for today.
Trusting the daily bread, it's a monumental challenge, but it is such a freeing way to live once you embrace it.
This raises an important question, and it's something I want to leave you with today. A provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week.
Let's hear it.
We talked about keeping that jar of manna for future generations. Think about the profound reality of that jar. Long after the manna stopped falling from the sky, long after they settled in Canaan and started farming their own food again, generations of Israelites had to look at that jar and trust in a miracle they never personally experienced.
They had to rely on the communal memory of grace.
Exactly. They had to look at a jar of ancient bread and believe that the God who provided for their ancestors in the barren wasteland was the same God providing for them in the harvest. So I have to ask, what are the jars of manna in your own life?
That's a great question.
What are the tangible, physical reminders of past grace and past survival that you need to intentionally look at when you are currently feeling starved or anxious about the future? Remember, the Hebrew word midbar wilderness is associated with absolute desolation. Yet it was the exact environment required for the Israelites to experience God's miraculous provision. Is it possible that the wilderness seasons in your own life are actually the necessary conditions for you to discover what you truly rely on?
Wow. What are your jars of manna? That completely reframes how we hold on to the memory of the good things that have happened to us.
It turns memory into a tool for future trust.
Well, we have covered some serious ground today, from the aerodynamic exhaustion of migrating quail to the profound economic theology of taking a day off.
And worms intense.
And worms intense. And finally, to the importance of remembering our own miracles. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Exodus 16. It is an absolute privilege to explore these sources with you.
It really is. Thank you for listening, and we hope this conversation gave you some incredible new insights to carry with you throughout your week.
Absolutely. God blesses all the listeners. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time we open up the sources together.